thank you, AgriTrust, again for supporting our dairy management series and for joining us again for another webinar.
All right. Well, thank you for having us, Bryce, and reaching back out to us and giving us this opportunity to get in front of some more folks. So, as Bryce mentioned, I'm Dalton Green, and I'm the field services representative for AgriTrust of Georgia. We are a self-insured group fund, so for workers' compensation insurance. And so what that means is, for those of you out there that may not be members of ours, may not know what AgriTrust is, may not know what a group fund is, you can join our group. And essentially, when you do that, what you're doing is pooling your funds that you pay in, your insurance premiums or funds that are pooled with other fund members' funds, and you're agreeing to pay each other's workers' comp claims. So that's what makes us a little bit different from a regular, more large-scale insurance company. We are a dividend-paying group fund, so typically after you're in our fund for 3 years, you start to receive a dividend check, and that's always a good thing that keeps people around for a while ordinarily. So if you don't have workers' comp, or you do, and you're not happy with who you are with, Josh, who you're going to hear from here in a little bit, or I, either one, would be very happy to talk with you about that and work with you to get you a quote and see how we can help you. One of the good things about AgriTrust is that we don't just provide you with the workers' comp insurance, but we provide you with a lot of other services that come along with that. And that, in addition to eventually receiving a dividend check back, you also get trainings such as this one that is specifically and exclusively for our fund members regarding safety protocols, regarding how to handle claims, regarding just navigating owning a business, and how to help you manage your employees well. So we provide a lot of those trainings and services, and we offer a lot of premium credit for participating in those types of things. So if we can ever help you, please reach out to us. I won't take a lot of your time. I know you're on here to really hear from Josh and what he has to share you safety and OSHA wise today, and he is the expert on that. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our safety and loss control manager, Josh White.
Thank you, Dalton, and thank you, Bryce, for allowing me to be here today. I don't know about expert. That's far from it. But hey, Bryce, I do want to ask, is it okay if they do unmute and ask questions as we go? Is that a possibility? Because that way it can just, if they do have questions, I'd rather it just be out in the open and let's get it done.
Okay. Yeah. If they feel comfortable doing that, yeah. If you're fine with it, I'm good with it.
Yeah. That's how I prefer to do it. Because I would love for y'all to be engaged. As much engagement as y'all have, it makes it that much easier or better. And it just allows us to explore more into it. Because all I'm doing right now is I'm just hitting the top points. I'm not going to go into great detail on any individual point. That is something that needs to be taken down at more of a local level when you get one-on-one, and we can, people can sit down and actually discuss what your hazards are. So with that, can y'all see this? How do I do screen? Nope, screen share right here. Nope, all right, well, shift F5. Okay. I can't tell if I'm up or not. Do y'all see the slides?
I do not, Josh.
Nope.
Yeah, we just see you.
Share.
We see, there you go. We got it okay. You've got it on presenter mode. If you can switch that. Or if you want, I can pull it up.
Hold on one more second.
Yeah.
Stop share. Share. So I have screen share number 2. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Bam. All right.
There we go.
All right. Sorry about that. I love technology. Hey, so yes, hey, my name is Josh White. I'm the Safety and Loss Control Manager for AgriTrust of Georgia. I am thankful to be here to be able to talk to you a few things about safety and OSHA and just some of the trends that we see with some violations and things of that nature. But to start with, I want to talk about what is an accident. When I ask people what an accident is, I typically hear somebody say, "Well, I know it when I see it." It's hard to define what it is, but I'll know an accident when I see it. Well, technically, an accident is an unplanned event resulting in bodily injury and or property damage. It is an unplanned event because if it was a planned event, that is fraud. So it's an unplanned event resulting in bodily injury plus or minus property damage. And accidents never just occur. They happen when normal working production intersects an unsafe act, which roughly accounts for 80% of all accidents. But when normal working production intersects an unsafe act plus or minus an unsafe condition, producing one of four predictable outcomes. Near miss, minor injury, major injury, fatality. The only thing that separates those outcomes is simply luck. Right? Accidents occur when normal working production intersects unsafe acts plus or minus unsafe conditions that produce one of four predictable outcomes: near miss, minor injury, major injury, fatality. The only thing that separates them is luck. And with these, they happen every day. They happen in every freaking environment, not just in a dairy. Right? But with accidents, like anything in life, there is a wild card. And that wild card simply being you cannot fix stupid. And unfortunately, I'm sure that quite a few of us have seen stupid and might even work with stupid occasionally. Right? But you cannot fix stupid. You can educate ignorance, but you cannot fix stupid. It's one thing if somebody does not know what they are doing. It's another thing if they know it and they still do it. So how accidents occur? Review of all that, excuse me. So accident is simply an unplanned event resulting in property damage or bodily injury that never just happen. They never just occur. They happen when normal working production intersects an unsafe act plus or minus unsafe condition resulting in four predictable outcomes: near miss, minor injury, major injury, fatality. The only thing that separates them is luck. What do I mean by luck? I'm sure we've all done it. We all know that one step that's a little bit loose. Everybody around knows that one step that's a little bit loose, but we step on it, it's okay. Nothing ever happens. We walk on it every day. It's fine until that one time it's not. What happened? What was the only difference in that one time? Well, it's just your luck ran out. Everything else could have been the exact same. Hey, everybody knew about that step, or everybody knew about that hose that's on the floor. Nobody's ever tripped on it before, but eventually your luck runs out. So what happens when your luck runs out? Well, a few things happens, with this, we are in an interesting environment with ag. Right? So depending on what your for production ag, there is an exemption for OSHA standards. Right? There is something, the small farm exemption. Right? If you have 10 or less non-family members, family members do not count towards this, towards your employee total. But if you have 10 or less employees throughout the year, you're typically considered exempt, unless you have what they call temporary labor camps. Temporary labor camps is just simply something that's not supposed to be there, like not your permanent housing. If you have H-2A, you're OSHA. Yeah, if you have H-2A that you are housing, you are now subject to OSHA standards. Even if it's just one of them. If you have any temporary labor camp, you are subject to OSHA standards. And that is no matter how many employees you have. Yeah. If you have, let's see what is. Oh, excuse me. All right. So with OSHA, OSHA comes around when certain things happen. All right. There's the most common cause for OSHA to come around is if there is an employee complaint. Employees can go to OSHA and complain about the environment and get them to come. If there is a recordable or reportable offense or accident, a reportable accident is a inpatient hospitalization, a loss of an eye, or an amputation. Right? If you have one of those, you are supposed to report to OSHA within 24 hours of your notification of it. All right. The other one is if there's a fatality, you are supposed to report to OSHA within 8 hours. So with the dairies, and this is in farming in general, with the small farm exemption, some of the numbers that we get from OSHA, we are not exactly sure if they are how true they are, because not every accident, not every amputation has been reported, not every fatality has been reported. So we don't know exactly all these numbers. So when I talk about numbers, take that with a grain of salt. It is probably worse than we think. Yeah, because we'll start talking about how dairy has actually been improving, but you know, how much so? We are quite unsure. Right. So one of the things that was asked was what is required as far as signage and what do we need to have out there? Okay. Well, so just doing a quick search, and one of the easiest things to do is talk to your Chamber of Commerce. They typically can help you with these labor law posters. But what is required is simply one, the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. This is one that just shows minimum wage, showing that it is $7.25, blah, blah, blah. The next one is the FLMA, the Family and Medical Leave Act. This one just states that basically that somebody can take leave, unpaid leave. Excuse me. Yeah, they can take unpaid leave for qualifying family and medical reasons. The next one that you need to have, the Migrant and Seasonal Agricultural Worker Protection Act, the MSPA, just lets them know goes with the H-2A. It lets them know their rights and what they have available for them. It gives them who to contact if anything they feel is not up to standards. The other one that you need to have is the OSHA Act. This one just explains employees' rights as far as how to have a safe workplace and where to report hazards. You need to have the Uniformed Service Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. That's basically saying it goes into regarding military service and reemployment. It protects the employees from discrimination based on military. Yeah, so if they are in the National Guard, you have to give them time to go out and train. The next one, whistleblower protection. That's just saying that you can't retaliate against whistleblowers. If you have workers' comp, you are required to have their panel of physicians and Bill of Rights posted. And all these need to be posted in a conspicuous place where all workers have access to them at all times. Right. And then finally, the last thing that needs to be posted if you meet the standards. All right. If you have the 11 or more employees at any time throughout the year, then you need to post the OSHA 300A. All right. What this is a summary of all OSHA reportable accidents within your business. All right. So anything that is greater than first aid, you need to have written down and reported on this poster. It just explains to them what all the accidents were that occurred. Right. It is a little tedious task to do, and it's something that hopefully, if you've got it done up or you've got it posted now. It's supposed to be posted from February 1 through April 31st. So if you have not posted those, please do so. All right. How are we doing on the time? Okay, 10 minutes. Okay. So one of the things that I really want to discuss with y'all is safety programs. How many of y'all actually have a safety program? And it's one thing to when I talk to a lot of people about safety programs, one of the common things I hear is, "Yeah, we've got one." Well, can I see it? Well, we don't have it written down. Well, if it's not written down, does it exist? If it is not documented, does it exist? And that's going to be a common theme throughout the rest of this presentation. If you do not have documentation of it, it does not happen, or it did not happen. Right? But with the safety program, one of the things that we like to talk about is it just a form, or is it more to it? Because you can have on paper everything that makes it look great. You can have on paper the best safety program in the world, but is it just a form? Is it just a piece of paper, or do you actually follow those things? With the safety program, there are 4 major components of it. The first and foremost is a commitment from leadership. It starts from the top down. It's the owners, the managers, the supervisors, those frontline supervisors have to be the ones that take the safety program to the level. If it doesn't have commitment from the higher ups, then the everyday employees will not do anything about it. The next one is employee participation. It's the employees that are out there doing the work. Have them participate in it. Have them help with putting this program together. Have them help explaining or showing what the hazards are. Put them in charge of developing your actual procedures. Have them help with if you have an incident or if you have an accident. Have some employees, not just the management. Have employees out there helping, because they're down there. They see what's going on the everyday level. The next part of safety program is going through and actually looking at the hazards, identifying the hazards, and figuring out how to control them. You've got to identify what is going on at your particular dairy. How can you handle it? Because what we can do at one dairy cannot be done at all of them. Right. And then finally, it also boils down to worker training. All workers need to be trained in the recognition or reporting of safety hazards on your farm. And they need to abide by those safety rules and perform their jobs in a safe manner. But if you have all 4 of those, and how you do your training is extremely important. Right? If majority of your workforce, I imagine, is immigrant labor. Right? Do you perform the training in a language they understand? That is huge. Also, how often do you do your training? When you get the new person that comes in, and I know this is common in a lot of industries, but if you are swamped in your season and you get that new person come in, how long does it take you to get them trained up? And how do you do it? Hopefully you have them being shadowed by somebody that can get or help them with the work. But training is extremely important. All right. So when we talk about some of the hazards that we see, the first one I want to talk about is tractor and mobile equipment safety. Overturns on tractor are still the number 1 fatality causing fatality cause in the ag industry. Overturns on tractors are horrible. There was actually an accident in South Georgia a few days ago, or I guess it's been a week ago. Gentleman's has not passed away, but he's in pretty bad condition. Right? Overturns are horrible. And I strongly encourage anybody that is operating a tractor to go through the Kubota's 10 Commandments. It's just a quick, short training on the 10 Commandments of tractor safety. And it talks about knowing your equipment, talks about knowing the implements involved, knowing your terrain, And it also talks about, as one of the last slides is, keeping your children off of the tractors. I know I grew up riding on the fender well of my granddaddy's 8M. I couldn't tell you how great that was. But eventually somebody's luck runs out. And it would be horrible for it to be on your luck. Another trend that we've been seeing too much lately are traffic accidents involved with tractors. Make sure if you are putting a piece of equipment on the road that they have the slow moving vehicle signs. And we would love for you to have somebody spotting you. That would be the best way. But of course, we also understand that's not always feasible. Make sure you have your slow moving vehicle signs, and if you have flashers, make sure they're on. Avoid going at dusk and dawn. Those 2 times people can't see the best. So please make sure you avoid trying to go out there. But it's not like I said, it's not just the tractor that you have to guard. It's also PTOs and moving parts. So this one right here is something I've done. I couldn't tell you how many times I've had to do this, putting in fence posts. Right. So this was just a winter field. They were going to put some cows out on it. So they went out there and was putting a temporary fence up. This young gentleman, I believe he was 24, got a little too close to the auger or to the drive line. There was no guard on it, ended up catching his arm, and it rotated his arm around a few times. That's his hoodie that is attached right there. It took his arm and took his clothes off of him. 24 years old. Yeah, so guards are extremely important. Not just on those, but the implements that are around it. All right, grain augers, sweep augers in grain bins. All these things. You got to make sure if it is a moving part, have a guard around it. The next one, area of concern, animal handling. That's something that y'all are going to have to do every day. I mean, that is y'all's business, is animal handling. So I've got a question. Do you actually train your employees on how to handle it? Do you actually go through and make sure that they understand, the concepts behind blind spots? Do they understand the concepts behind the flight zone, signs of stress, and point of balance? Simple things that you might take advantage or take I won't say advantage of, but you don't take in consideration because you probably grew up around this. I mean, I imagine that the majority of the people I'm talking to right now grew up around cows every day of their life, or 75% at least. That's not everybody. You got to make sure that you are talking to your employees and talking to them about how to do it, and how to do it with as little stress as possible. Hopefully, aren't out there with old cattle prongs shocking them every which way. Also, lately, biosecurity. I know that's one I'm sure has been talked a lot about with y'all, but do you talk to your employees about biosecurity and the different diseases they have to be worried about? Tuberculosis, E. coli, salmonella. Do y'all actually discuss with your employees the ways to handle this? Confined space. Confined space is an area that you really have to watch out with. It's more prevalent in your industry than you might consider or they might realize. But what is a confined space? It's Basically, it's an enclosed or partially enclosed area that is big enough for workers to enter with limited or restricted means for entry and exit, and not designed for continuous occupancy. All right, so you have actually many confined spaces on the dairy that you have to worry about. Grain bins being one of them. Manure pits is probably y'all's biggest area of concern, and I'm sure that many of y'all have heard about some of the tragedies that have happened. But there, when we talk about confined space, there are basically two types: non-permit and permit required. They all meet the same definition as far as having large enough for a worker to enter and perform, and that's huge. For it to be confined space, that area has to be large enough for the person to actually get inside of it. If they cannot get all the way in, it's not considered a full confined space. It is not designed for continuous occupancy. So, I mean, it's not like a rest area. It's not a dormitory or something of that nature. It's a smaller space. The area is restricted or is limited or restricted by means of entry or exit that would restrict the ability of all workers to exit quickly in case of an alarm. It does not mean that there's only one entry or exit point. It means that it is small enough where you cannot escape quickly. A permit required confined space is one that meets all those criteria, but then meets also one of four others. For a permit, it has a potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere. It could be oxygen deficient. It could have a combustible atmosphere. It could have a toxic atmosphere. But it has to have one of those three for a hazardous atmosphere. And mostly it's that toxic atmosphere, the production of hydrogen sulfide and methane, and actually even the carbon dioxide with your weight. All of it's creating a hazardous atmosphere. A second hazard that could present for space to be considered permit requirement is engulfment potential. If you have the potential for it to, like in a grain bin, if you were to go up top, that's one that we've had before. So gentleman gets up on top of the grain bin trying to push some seed down, and it bridged over. They end up collapsing. Once it gets to a point, it just sucks you in. If that's something, if y'all do have grain bins that you have to go in, that's better watch out with stuff like that one. The third hazard that can present for space to be considered permit required is if it has entrapment risk. If it has this stuff in there to make exiting extremely difficult. If there's lines in the way that you just can't get through, or pipes in the way. The fourth area for the space to be considered permit required is there's just a safety and health risk that is present. If they fall in confined spaces where ladders are used in slick and wet, workers can fall in confined spaces where the ladders are used, they're too slick and wet to grab a hold to. They can fall in where there's moving parts. All that can make that area considered a confined space. Lockout, tagout. A huge area of concern in any industry. But lockout, tagout. Are you training your guys on how to actually prevent things when they're having to do maintenance on them. Do you go through and talk, with lockout tagout, I guess I should say, you have 3 different types of people. You have authorized personnel, you have effective personnel, and then others. Authorized personnel are people that are actually going to be working on the equipment. They're right there with the equipment. Effective personnel are the people around those that are working on the equipment. And then others are like office personnel that really don't have any, aren't around the hazard at all. But do you train your workers on these? Do you actually, train your authorized personnel on the aspects of lockout tagout? Do you go through the list of the different forms of hazards or the sources? Do you talk about the mechanical, hydraulical, pneumatic, chemical, thermal, and gravity? I want to talk to you a little bit on this one. This is a claim that we have. This gentleman was working this front end loader and ended up having a hydraulic leak. Well, so he decided he was going to work on it by himself and lifted up the front end of the front bucket so he could access the hydraulic pump and all the lines. You can see that's where that little opening is up at the front. He had been running this machine for a few hours that day, so that pump was pretty warm. The way this actual setup was he had to remove one of the middle lines, but he couldn't get to it the way that with the other lines intact. So he had to remove one of the other hydraulic lines around it. He chose the wrong one, ended up hitting the one that controlled that boom or that bucket. It lowered and pinned him between the bucket and that hydraulic pump. He sat there for a couple hours before his boss finally came looking for him. And mind you, that pump had been on for a few hours, so it was extremely hot. He ended up getting burnt from basically belly button to knee. Just a slow burn. But do you go through and talk to your employees about all the hazards associated with it? Hey, if you get the reason he had the bucket up was so he could access that hole better, but he didn't have anything propped up. He released that hydraulic line and gravity took over. So with your lockout tagout, do you instruct your personnel on all these? Latest and greatest on heat. Heat is another one that's been coming up a lot lately. Right now, there's still no current OSHA standard on it, but they are using the general duty clause to kind of make this effective. Right? But what they are saying is that at 80 degrees, you need to start a heat protocol. Right? And this is 80 degrees heat index. Right? So at 80 degrees, you're supposed to you're supposed to notify your workers that it's going to be a little warm and that they have access to any of the water that they want. You must give them access to any cool or to have cool drinking water. But then you start also just encouraging them to drink some of that water throughout. There's no real major steps at 80. The big ones come at 90. At 90, you're supposed to implement a buddy system where you have somebody looking out for the other, but also start mandating a break. So a 15-minute break every 2 hours is what, for the most part, what they're calling for. Like I said, there is nothing that is concrete, so we're kind of using best management practices on this. But you are supposed to monitor for signs of heat illness and things of that nature. Also, with both of these, you're supposed to start an acclimatization process. Okay? Basically, with new hires that are not accustomed to the work environment, you're supposed to give them a 20% increase per day. So you start them off at a 20% workload. and then you increase that by 20% each day until they are acclimatized to the working environment. So basically, you have to slowly wean them to the heat. If you have a full-time employee that goes on a vacation for over 2 weeks, you are supposed to give them an acclimatization process as well. But theirs starts off at 50%, and then you increase it 20% each day. Or so you basically have a 3-day deal with them. But the heat is one that, without further guidance, we're not quite sure what's going to happen with it. We're still up in the air. Slips, trips, and falls. All right. Slips, trips, falls are still a leading cause of injury and fatalities in just industry. Not just in dairies, but in industries. This is one that happens everywhere and to anybody. Do you talk to your employees or make sure your employees keep up with housekeeping protocols? Do you make sure that they're picking up after themselves? Make sure that hose isn't just laying out on the ground the whole time. Do you have a footwear policy? Do you make sure that they all have proper footwear? Make sure that the grips are good enough for what they need. All right. Hopefully nobody's in there in sandals. Also, another cause of accidents that I see a lot with is what we call distractive walking. Right? People walking with their cell phones to their face. Do you have a cell phone policy at work? Right? Do you have something that, make sure that the guys know that they are not allowed to be on cell phones except in certain locations, rest areas, breaks, things of that nature. Another big area of concern for y'all, silage piles. Do you teach your guys how to work on silage piles? Do you make sure that they don't get too close to that face? How do you teach them to respond to bridging that face? Do you teach them? Do you instruct them the proper ways that you want it done? And one of the final ones I want to talk about is hazard communication. All right. This is once again a written plan, and I should have said this on all these. Even with tractor safety, with tractor safety, there is no actual guidelines as far as, hey, this is the what you're supposed to cover. Right? There's no true standards on it, but you're supposed to provide the employee with a hazard-free environment, and that means that you're needing to teach them what hazards are on or are associated with these. But like with hazard communication, this is talking about the different chemicals that you have within your company or within your dairy. Do you talk to them about the different things that y'all have? The formaldehyde. Do you actually go into it? Do you talk to them about what happens with SDS if something was to pour on them or to get on them? Do you actually talk to them about what to do, or at least where to find these? One that we get, unfortunately, too often is when people put herbicides, in particular, into a different container. And for some reason, people love using Gatorade bottles, I guess because of the wide mouth. But filling up a Gatorade bottle with pesticides and then leaving it out for people, we unfortunately have had quite a few poisonings. Make sure your guys are labeling, using the proper containers and labeling everything in the correct manner. But yeah, SDS is the safety data sheets. Make sure you have a copy of everything or all the chemicals that you currently use, and that you have one of their safety data sheets available. Also, make sure that you have the proper PPE for any of it. Your gloves, aprons, goggles, things of that nature. And it all has to be written down. If it's not written down, it did not happen. And the last thing I want to say is recognize the problem is not the same as fixing or changing the problem. If you see something that is wrong if you see a hazard that's uncontrolled, you need to do something about it. You got to be able to control it. It's not the same as recognizing. It's not the same as controlling. And with that, any questions, comments, and/or concerns?
Josh, could you talk a little bit about what the farmers maybe should expect if there is an accident and they do contact OSHA? What does that process look like for them?
Okay, so a couple of things could happen. All right, so if it's a fatality, they're going to come inspect. Yeah, if you contact OSHA and there is a fatality, they are going to come and ask what's happening. If you contact them about others, one of two things could happen. They could do a what they call a rapid response, where they basically send you a questionnaire, try to get more information about what it is, and then they'll make a further determination. If they feel it is warranted, they'll be there within a couple of days. Actually, we've seen some. There was a grain bin accident that happened, and OSHA was there before the owner. OSHA found out about it before the owner did somehow, and was beat the owner to the place. So they can get there quicker. But if they get there, they're going to introduce themselves. They've got to show badges. They've got to show them who they are. And then the best thing to do is pull them into a conference room, get them by themselves, or isolate them. You don't want them just walking, getting free rein, but isolate them, get them in there, and they are going to tell you exactly why they are there. They're going to tell you what has caused this, what caused the investigation, and exactly why they're there. And then they're going to want to do investigations, and then they're going to want to see the scene. If you are at that point, of course, hopefully, if you are at the point where you're calling OSHA, you also need to contact your attorney. That, I guess that should be said as well. Always contact your labor attorney if you're going to have to contact OSHA, because just the fees and fines that they can present to you can be a little challenging. But yeah, if they get there, make sure you limit what they see and what they hear. You don't tell your employees what to say. Tell them to be truthful, but you don't coach them up on any of that. And then when they get there, you take them straight to the spot that it happened and nowhere else.
What kind of forms are they going to need to show an OSHA inspector when they come on the farm after an accident? Or what kind of documentation do they need to provide?
I guess I could stop with this. They're going to ask for a written safety plan. How do you stop the screen share?
I stopped it for you.
Okay. All right. They're going to ask for a written safety plan. They're also going to ask for your OSHA 300 log. That's going to be the list of all your injuries. And then a list of any trainings that you have done.
Would they also have to provide that safety data sheet, or only if it's related to like chemicals?
If it's related there, they're going to ask. Yeah, they're going to. If it is chemical related, they're going to ask for your HAZCOM policy. Yeah, they're going to stay related to what they came for. So when they come for a specific reason, they are limited to their scope. But if they see a hazard, they can expand on it. So if they come to your dairy, like I said, the best thing to do is if they come there, you don't let them go anywhere else. You don't let them talk to anybody. They get to a manager, and then you get them to a conference room. And hopefully by then you've contacted your attorney. That way they can be with you at this time. They're going to, like I said, they will identify themselves and they will tell you what they're there for. Uh, you do have a little bit of leadway as far as how quick you can respond. Yeah, if they come to the office person takes them back to the conference room, the manager might not be able to get there within the next 5-10 minutes, right? I mean, who knows where they are? So it could be a little while. You can use that to your advantage to an extent to make sure certain things are done in your area as cleaned up as possible. But you don't want to leave them stranded for too terribly long, if that makes sense.
I want to touch back to, I got a question in here about the permit and non-permit for confined spaces. So when we talk about permit, that in a confined space, we're meaning that employees on the farm have to be granted permission to go into that space, correct? It's not like they apply for a permit with an agency.
Correct. No, the permit comes from the supervisor. Like, so you'll, within your confined space program, you should have a permit supervisor, somebody that's going to basically be in charge of, hey, somebody's going in. They're the one that needs to be there to know what's going to happen. They make sure that, there is that buddy that's watching them, that there's that watch. They don't have to be the person that is the watch, but they're just the ones, okay, yeah, they're going in, so I need to make sure that they know what to do.
Okay. So it's identifying what those potential confined space hazards are and then ensuring that everybody's being as safe as possible.
Yes.
Okay. And then a non-permit means there's no requirement to.
Right. Yeah. Empty grain bin. You have an empty grain bin. There's no hazards in there. You can go in and out without having to let somebody know.
So we got a question about like helping to identify the confined space. So like an example would be, you mentioned grain bins, but a lot of our farms have commodity barns, which are usually have an open end, or there's a barn with stalls inside it that's usually open ended. At first thought, you wouldn't think that's a confined space if you're standing there at the mouth of it. But once we move past the mouth of that commodity shed, does that turn it into a confined space?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. So any chance, I guess that goes back to, you said engulfment.
Yes,
any chance that they could be engulfed by
engulfment,
cottonseed or whatever, that'll be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then also with it, engulfment would be the major hazard on that part. Hopefully you're not getting into environment like the toxic atmosphere. And then, but do y'all do weigh tanks? Do y'all use like the weigh storage tanks? I know those can be pretty bad. Like there was one that came in, I was reading about. Gentleman was trying to clean out an old weigh tank, and there was so much carbon dioxide built up because it had soured, and he didn't realize it, and took the air from him, and he ended up drowning in like 3 inches of whey liquid.
I don't believe so, but maybe some of the farmers on the call can correct me. I know most of the time in the dairy space, we're talking about toxic gas that's coming off of manure,
yeah,
either from tankers or something like that. Another one could be potentially, we use a lot of chemicals on the parlor side, like chlorine for pre-dip. So I guess, are there any general tips or tricks or anything else maybe you could mention about like chemical storage and chemical handling for farms?
It all depends on what chemicals you're running. So the best thing is just if you're using industrial amounts of chemical. Right? So I'm not talking about you have a can of WD-40. That's not what we're looking for when we're talking about our chemical standards. If you're using industrial amounts of it, Yeah, so you like your chlorine. What was it? I saw formaldehyde was another one. I saw it was used sometimes. Uh, different chemicals. Whatever y'all are using, just there will be an SDS sheet, and it has everything you need to know on it. It tells you the handling procedures for it. It tells you how to store it. Because each thing has a different way to do it. Some of them can't be stored with others. Depending on what you got. So I can't really answer that without getting into.
Well, where would they get that SDS sheet? That would come with whoever's supplying it
Yes,
usually, or
the supplier should have it, and if
okay.
not, you can just Google search, and they're all out there for free.
Okay. And so that is something if an OSHA inspector is walking the farm, they're going to look to see are the employees handling the chemical, but is the chemical being stored according to that SDS sheet? Is that
Yeah.
right?
So if they're coming for a chemical related accident, yes, they're going to look for all that. They're going to look for your storage. They're going to look for your handling procedures, your PPE, things of that nature. If they're coming for something else and they see handling procedures gone wrong, they can go, oh, I want to go this way. Yeah, and if they don't see it, they cannot ask for it.
Okay. We got a question about just general document maintenance. Is there anything besides, or I guess I'll go back over. You listed four things from a documentation standpoint they need to be keeping: the written safety plan, that 300 log, which is where they're recording any injuries that happen, any training documentation or log showing that everyone's been trained, and then we said SDS for chemical. Is there anything else, throughout the course of the year they need to be keeping record of so that they're prepared in case OSHA or some other entity wants to look at their documents? Is there any other OSHA requirement they should be keeping up with from a form
I know one of
standpoint?
the big ones I've heard lately is make sure if you have any medical files, keep them separated from personnel files. That's if you have anything medically related to somebody, medical questionnaires, things of that nature, it needs to be in a locked cabinet separate from everything else.
Okay.
Um, as far as other documents, training. Oh, if you get on to somebody, if you have to correct somebody's behavior, make sure you document that as well. Right? Because one of the things, like I said, is it with your training or your safety program, is it a form or is it more? Right? If you are actually following your safety program and you run across somebody not doing what they're supposed to, they're on the tractor and they're going crazy, going fast on the tractor. Okay, they're speeding on it, and you have to correct them. If you do not document that, that never happened. Therefore, you're not actually implementing your program. So if OSHA came and said, "All right, let me see your tractor. You got into a tractor accident. Let me see your training for it." So nobody's ever done anything like this before. Well, yeah, he did something like this before. Well, where did it go? Where did it happen? Uh, if you're not correcting a behavior, are you actually doing that part of the training?
What are some good resources for farms that want to develop a training program or want to find good training
OSHA
materials?
has some, like the OSHA website has some, not so much for the ag industry. Ag Safe does a good bit. I've seen some good stuff from them. Uh, what was it?
You mentioned Kubota's Ten Commandments. Any other kind of
Yeah,
industry?
yeah.
Uh,
Kubota 10 Commandments is a great one for tractor safety. It's one I've followed quite a bit. For chemical handling, if you're getting into if you're doing pesticides and stuff of that nature, like those trainers, hopefully you're doing your work protection standard. That's a training. It's a video that you can do online. That's the best one I've found. It's boring, but it gets the job done. Um, Forklift training is something that we've been concentrating on lately. Um, just going through and making sure that people are getting trained, and we did what we call a train the trainer class. where we were training people to train your guys. So you would have sent your manager to us. He would have gotten the material to train everybody on the farm. Yeah, so we're starting to do stuff like that. I know just AgriTrust, we have a few things. Like I've got a template builder that I can send some stuff to you.
Yeah.
Some different templates that I have, and you can go see stuff like that.
Yeah. And Dalton's put your email and his email there in the chat as well for our
Perfect.
attendees. So if anybody's got any follow-up questions, they can reach out to y'all specifically about some of that.
The best thing, like I said, like I know for our members, I can sit down with you and we can really go through some of these, and I can show them what to do. But it boils down to upper management sitting down and actually wanting to do it. Yeah, the initial paperwork is a booger.
Let's see if anybody else has any questions I haven't covered. Now would be a good time to unmute or send those into the chat. I'm going back over my notes to make sure we didn't miss anything. Seeing, I don't see anybody unmuting. So I guess we will share, Josh will share yours and Dalton's contact with our attendees so that they can follow
even if you're not members
questions.
of AgriTrust, if you have questions, let me know. Like, I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Yeah. Dalton, do you have anything else?
I was just going to say thank you for reaching out to us, and again, like you've already said, our contact. I did put our contact information there. It's a pretty simple process. If anybody, you kind of heard Josh talking about some of the services that we offer there. If you want us to quote you and look into becoming a fund member, it's a pretty simple process. I mean, as far as filling out the forms and all that's needed to fill out. And also, if you have an independent insurance agent, one thing that I did not mention at first, you have an independent insurance agent that you already work with, you can still get coverage through us with your independent insurance agent. You just put us in contact with them and we can work with them. You can also come to us direct though. So, but thank you, Bryce.